welcome to the new standard. I usually get asked, thanks, didn't even do anything, but okay. I take it. So usually the first question is like people ask, what is the new standard? And so I think for everybody who works in tech, the world went a bit upside down beginning of the year, where everybody came back from the holidays. And then since then we talk about token maxing, looping, goaling, vibe coding, God knows what. And then I felt like, oh my God, I don't know shit anymore. And feel like I need to level up myself. And usually when those moments happen, I think I'm not the only one. And then I ask myself, okay, let's maybe make like a little event out of this and ask other people in the industry how they're dealing with this kind of stuff. And from the turnout here, it seems like more people are interested in that, which is quite nice. So what we did here, we did actually 2 of those events in the US, one in San Francisco and one in New York. But here's our home turf, so I'm very happy to be here now and brought a few people with us. So maybe we start with you, given you sit here already. So we have Dan. Dan is from Cursor / SpaceX and all these other names your company has now. He's one of the best designers, design engineers, which he would never even say, of course.
Middling at best, I think.
Fair enough. He also writes a book about making software, little shout out. And he's a very curious person, knows a lot of like random facts. And I thought he's a great moderator for today. So he's going to walk us through. We're going to do roughly like 30, 45 minutes panel. But I think the real cool stuff is Q&A. So we got a ton of questions. But what we're going to do is Stephanie will run around later with a microphone. She's over there. And then you can ask questions. So we keep plenty of time for that. Next up, Ryan. Ryan from Notion. So Ryan and I go back 10 years. 10 years ago, I moved from Germany to London and worked at this company called Facebook. And Ryan and I had tried to figure out how we shipped the first Swift app, which was a brand new programming language. And I feel old now. And so he came over from New York, so big applause for that, because I didn't think that will happen. And he figures out what the heck AI means for Notion. Are they going to get Sherlocked? Are you going to be an agent company? Who knows? But very curious to hear from that. And then we're going to have VB over from here. So VB, he's from OpenAI, so from the heavy hitters. And VB and I, we don't know each other only online. But I'm super impressed by him because, on Twitter, there's all this rage bait and people like have strong opinions. And then usually VB is this person that slides into those comments, which I would never do, and ask like generally interesting questions. And even sometimes what you told me, change your phone number and let people call you and convince you or convince the others that Codex is a pretty good app, which I would agree with. And so with that, we're going to start rambling and yapping on AI for like 30 minutes. And I give it to Dan.
Sure. Hopefully we don't melt. I can't wait for all the pictures Bruno's taking of us just like sweating on stage. It's going to be sick. I'm going to start with a spicy question, inspired by Mitchell Hashimoto's tweet like a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to ask you, do you read the code and does it matter?
Who's got to start?
All right. Go for it.
I strongly agree with Mitchell. We've had this debate internally at Notion. We've gone full both ends of the spectrum on this, where it's like code is water, it doesn't matter, it all depends on the output. It depends on the correctness, on the tests, on the verification. And then we've swung all the way to the other side, where it's like, no, you need to read every little detail. You can't trust these models. But I think that I've landed somewhere in the middle. And who really convinced me is a peer of mine. His name's Jeffrey Litt, who works at Notion. And he summed it up really well. He said, I'm going to paraphrase, you need to, understanding what is going on earns you the right to participate. And that really struck a chord with me because it made me realize if I don't actually understand what's going on, then who is steering who? And so I've come down to, I read the code. I am not very pedantic about the code, but I need to at least understand what's going on. And sometimes reading the code is not literally reading the code, but getting summaries of it and understanding the high level of what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think my view is sort of similar to yours. I think a lot of this is subjective to what you're trying to do with it, right? Like, is it like just a vibe coded dashboard or I don't know, like a game? Then probably you're wasting your time reading the code, right? And so, for example, on the side, I love to make random games, right? It's just, I don't know how to make games, but I'm like, can I prompt this model to do the thing that I have in my brain, right? And I don't want to bog myself down by all the stupid logic that it's writing, which I don't really understand, and probably it is suboptimal, and probably it's not the best way to go about it. But do I enjoy it? Yes. Would I do it again? 100% yes, right? But then there comes code bases which are mission critical. So, for example, our Codex harness, which is open source, we have a standing policy that if you don't understand what you're merging in the PR, or if you're asking for a review on a PR where you don't understand, then go back and close the PR. And because it's like, just the sheer amount of laptops that are running that, sheer amount of VMs that are running that, and in so many untrusted locations, you want to be 100% sure. And I think the average person probably has this in somewhere in the middle, right? And I feel like over there, you can define your own sort of like set of skills to review. You can define your own set of like principles on what is it that is important to you. But I feel like it really depends on the severity of what you're working on. Right?
So for us, it's a bit different. Like who does code reviews here? Is an engineer and does code reviews? Yeah, so the usual. Like we don't do those. First of all, we never did this because when Peter and I started the company, we knew each other for years, and so we would just push code, and we kept this until now. And so for us, that was never really like a massive difference because you're not really looking at other people's code. So then it's more like, what do you do? And because we like build a product for ourselves, and I think this is the same for all of us. You have this like feedback loop. You push the code, you test it immediately, and you see if your functionality-wise breaks something. Which I think, to your point, that's really what matters to us more: the functionality or like the UX or whatever, instead of like the raw code in whatever language it is.
I kind of want to circle back to. So you have this standing policy that if you don't understand the code, you have to delete it or you go backwards, right? How practically? That's like unenforceable. Like, is it right? Like, how do you enforce that? Is it a culture thing? Like, yeah, how do you actually enforce that?
Again, I mean, I think it goes back to what's the severity of like whatever change you sort of like bring in, right? So it's mostly we do enforce reviewers, right? So we do want changes to at least go through one pair of sort of like human eyes, and also we do have a lot of skills which would help the reviewer understand what's happening so that they're not wasting the entire day just like reviewing each and every PR. But it's also just like when you set a really high bar for what you're shipping and you like really understand that, oh, like if something goes wrong, like it's going to impact like potentially millions of users out there, you really sort of like set a really high bar, right? And again, as I said, like it's not all like human review, right? Like you do want to have potentially Codex looking at your PR as soon as it's ready for review. You want to have some local skills. You want to have like good agents.md or Claude.md for those who swing that way. And and then you want to make sure that you are set up for success. And so that's kind of the only, and I probably took the most extreme example in this case, right? But for example, I maintain our developer services. In those cases, as long as Codex is happy with it, in most cases, I'm like, this is good. LGTM, I will raise my own PR. The Obama giving himself medal. Like, I'm like, this is good. Thank you so much. And, Codex will also give me a thumbs up and all good. But yeah.
it's interesting because I find myself like when Mitchell wrote that tweet, I was like, oh yeah, of course, like I want to be this person. There's a little bit of like an identity thing happening there, which is like, yes, I want to be the kind of person who reads the code.
Yeah.
Occasionally, I'm not reading the code. I'm not going to lie to you. It's just interesting how. I guess the counter argument is it's sort of like a cope mechanism, right? I think it's still important to understand things, but the models are getting better every day, and they understand things that I've never understood, and they keep solving maths conjectures left, right, and center. How do you? Yeah, is that like a permanent thing? Like, do you see one day we'll just be fine not understanding and trust in the almighty models?
I think there's this one thing that people compare it to is like the different programming languages and abstractions. Like nobody really reads assembly code anymore. We got C and whatever. So I think maybe similar to this, right? Sort of English is the new programming language. But I think there's also like this, there's two type of people. Like there's some people that love the idea of engineering, like the skill of it. I was never that. I was more like a builder, which just like want to produce something in the world. And so I think depending on that, you maybe like lean more to the one or the other side. But I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I don't think in the near term we're going to be reading the code. I think both the models are going to get better, but I also think like the techniques and the harnesses and like all of these things are going to continue to improve to the point where, like you were talking about skills, like I have my own sort of like review skill that like breaks down a huge change into small parts and it fans out and does reviews. And it's like, it's phenomenal for me. It works really, really well. And I'm imagining already this just like at scale built into these harnesses or even just like RL'd into the models or something. And so like being able to like check their own work feels like a natural thing that's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add, except like whatever you two said. But I think the only thing is that as we get to better and better models, right? A lot of what I used to do maybe in January of this year is just obsolete, right? Like every other month, I think I know his Twitter name, B Journey, the Boris, yes. Sorry. I'm like terminally online.
Don't learn your competitors' names. It's fine.
So like Boris had this tweet recently and he was like, hey, like you should every month just look at your skills and like try and see like which one are important, which one are not, and like delete the ones that are not. And it's like actually true, right? Like every time I would try a new model, like half of the skills are useless just because they are done as like the inherent function of the model itself, right? And I feel like we'll continue to see these gains as we try and push the frontier forward. And yeah, I think it's like it's just a game of trying to figure out like what is it that you're okay giving up sort of control for, and what is it that you're not, and so on.
Yeah, that's fair enough. One of the other questions I had was like, with the model capabilities advancing, do you try to be proactive about like trying to, target where the model will be in 6 months? Are you building for a future where the models are 10 times smarter than they are today, or like the rest of us being a bit reactive to today's intelligence?
We at Notion, we definitely build for the future. Because I think that we build really, really fast internally, but even our fast for the rate of change in the industry, it's not keeping up with model advances and all of these things. And so if we were to just build for what capability exists today, in 3 months when we launch some new feature and we're like, oh my God, it's so great, the models have already like eked out ahead, and then we've got to start figuring out, okay, what are they good at now? And it ends up becoming this sort of like endless game of catch up. I think like the biggest one that we're thinking about right now is like, we call it like tokenomics. Like tokens have a price, and if we are building for the capability that most people can afford today, in 6 months from now, that is going to be just like table stakes. and then our capabilities are going to be behind. So we're always kind of looking at almost like how expensive is, let's say, like Fable, for instance, like super expensive. But can we build tools and harnesses and those sort of things that Fable's really, really good at, so that in 6 months, when these things start to become a little bit more commoditized, which honestly feels like even today, what was it, the like Grok 4.6 is coming out and everyone's like, oh my god, it's like everybody's releasing a Fable level model. And I'm like, here it is. Like, they're already getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper.
Do you have anything to add, or are you just gonna look pretty?
Try to be the latter. Let me think. I think there is this other thing, like, I actually wanted to ask, like, yeah, how do you do build for the future? Because, like, yeah, price is one thing, but even capability, what does it even mean to be smarter? Like, I feel like a lot of those things, actually the step changes are like almost a combination of a model and a new paradigm using it. So when I look back, well, ChatGPT was the first one I kicked it off, and then maybe like things like Cursor actually, which like put it in the IDE, and then Codex, which kind of removed the IDE, or like Cloud Code in between, right? So I think there is this like, and they're all usually tied to like a specific model, which then really changes things. So I think like even when the model doesn't change, there's so much capability overhang, which isn't even unlocked. And we only see that, and I think when a new model comes out, this combination of new UX and new intelligence that somehow makes click. Because otherwise, I feel like all these new models, when I use them, they feel all the same. I can't compare them anymore. Yeah, like this seems to be a better result, but I don't know if it's the model or I prompted or whatever. But then every now and then, which seems to be every 6 months, something changes, and then, oh yeah, that's the new thing. But it's usually not just the model, at least what I observed.
Yeah, I mean, so anecdotally at like Cursor, we've started like unshipping a lot of stuff from the harness that was necessary 6 months ago, right? Like we used to have to do a lot of clever stuff about like context, like dynamically reducing the context window. And now context windows are huge, and the models are so good at, compaction is good. Everything's just like solved by the models being much more capable, that we just slowly delete parts of the product. But I kind of want to shift gears a little bit and talk. I'm really curious about you two in particular, because at OpenAI, I think your team structure is probably a little bit unusual to start with. But I want to know what your teams look like now versus 12 months ago. How have they changed? Are they smaller? Are they bigger? Is there any noticeable difference in the way you're putting together teams?
At least for me, I don't know if I would say they're smaller. Well, there's two key differences that I'm noticing with my team at Notion. One, they're flatter. I don't think that we need this like pyramid scheme of managers and directors and like org building and all that stuff.
Aren't you a manager?
I am a manager. Yeah. And in fact, I'm incredibly bullish on, if you are an engineering manager, you should actually be like super technical. Yeah. I think that coding agents have made the barrier to entry so small that even if you are like running off to an afternoon of one-on-ones, you could kick off a couple agents to fix a few bugs for your team, to go review some code, to like understand an architecture and be able to like help your team on a technical level. My hot take is that like the era of like MBA engineering managers is like gone, and I think that's a really good thing. The other thing that I've noticed at Notion is we've shifted into this almost like what we're calling a barbell hiring strategy, where we want really senior people that like have experience building really complicated engineering systems. And then we actually want like new grads. We want people who are young, curious, hungry, super malleable, that can like learn from the senior people and are really excited to pick up all these new tools and techniques.
I'm amazed you got through that without saying AI native. It was like right there.
Was close. I think the latter definitely sounds familiar. I think like you have very senior people that can put in the architecture and it scales, because that doesn't seem to be necessarily in the model yet. Or to some degree, maybe back to your point, you kind of need to understand that at least to reason about if it really solves your problems. The other thing which probably you've seen a lot as well, that designers are just going straight to code. Our usage of Figma certainly went down. And like it's just more direct going from like an idea. Sometimes these are just prototypes, but like seeing a prototype that is actually built is so much nicer, and you get so much more experience and see it. So that was a big change that we've seen. Like pretty much every designer now produces something with AI in the product directly, and that sometimes are visual changes, but also sometimes just like ideas to explore certain features.
Sweet. I feel like a bit like out of time, like a Luddite, because I still spend quite a lot of time in Figma. I still use the IDE like exclusively. I still like occasionally write code by hand.
What?
Yeah. So I definitely realized that I'm like an outlier. But I'm kind of curious on. It does feel like there's a role compaction, like a compression of roles between front-end engineer and design, but it's going like one direction, right? So I feel like design is compressing towards front-end engineering, but front-end not going the other way. How do you think about front-end as a skill now? Because models aren't great at it, but designers are coming for them. Like, is there a place for front-end engineers? Or is everyone going to become a systems engineer?
I think if you look at currently on the Codex team, we have, I don't know, probably maybe like 10 like sort of designers, right? And it's like, it's so much more easier for people to convince someone when they have like a mock-up. And that mock-up is something that you can actually go and touch and like, do things with and like get a feel for it. And I think we've definitely seen like a rise of these sort of like out of the box ideas when people are like, oh, like what if we do thing X? Like for example, if you use computer use with Codex, it was like a totally different product altogether. It came from an acquisition from Sky, and one of the designers was like, oh, what if we just bring this into Codex? And that's how computer views came to be. That's how app shots came to be, and so on. And we've seen like a lot of sort of like the throughput of your average sort of like designer go up by manifold times, right? And it's also like, I feel like people don't really, like I think we don't really care as much of like how the end result would look like, but more about like how would the interaction with the user look like, and what could be the friction points, what are maybe some inconsistencies, and how we can sort of like get ahead of those. And because there is like abundance of feedback, you can always just point Codex to a Slack thread or like to a thread and be like, oh, these are all the issues, can you just like go about it? So we've definitely seen that people have become much more high agency overall. Yeah.
I guess my counter is that the real differentiator nowadays is going to be the people that actually do have an eye for these like really important tiny details and can come up with novel, not over the top, but like novel micro interactions. They care about performance. They care about transitions. Because now I think the barrier to entry is like so low. It's so easy to just like get Shad CN and throw a bunch of shit together, and it's like, congrats, you like built an app. But it's like the folks, I think everybody looks up to like Linear. I still think that they're like the gold standard. They just like, they care so much about like little tiny details. And I think it's going to be like folks like that. Maybe they're you would call them designers, maybe you'd call them front-end engineers, but it's just like people who care about that shit that like are going to like sweat the details on it, that I think are going to be the ones that push people ahead.
Yeah, I think I have a slightly different take, actually. So
You don't think caring is important?
yes.
Spicy.
So no, what I think is like, so I'm an engineer by trade, so I'm probably allowed to say this, but I feel like engineering was never really the hard part. And let's walk this back. But if you think about it, engineering is the solution, right? Like it's the end state. Like, okay, we build a solution. But if you build a wrong solution and don't even understand the problem, like it doesn't really matter, right? And so that's, I think, what design actually, at the moment, I shift more towards solution, because it's like, oh, there's all these shiny new models. I can do things that I couldn't do before. It's quite tempting. But I think they should actually move much more in the other direction, where like, hey, what is actually our business problem? What is the user stuff? Because this kind of things are really hard to do with models. And I mean, you guys were on customer journey here throughout London, figuring that out, right? And I think there is a lot of opportunity there, because if you can get better there, and then suddenly building the solution gets a lot easier, I think that's really nice, because then you actually build for the right problem. And I think it's just like at this moment, it's just this tempting thing. You get suddenly a skill that you could never do before. And the other thing is like maybe a bit underappreciated.
Yeah, I think Rasmus called this design production, right? Like what has historically been the realm of like software engineers, now designers are doing the like production part. And there's a question to the extent that that's actually like useful, like with their skill set. I think personally, it's intoxicating to be able to build something by yourself. And like I think a lot of designers get sort of catnipped by like, oh, there's no stakeholders, it's just me and my buddy Fable, and we're just ripping tokens all day.
You're absolutely right.
But yeah, that tracks. I think I spend more time in Figma now. Like I haven't used auto layout in like a year, but I spend a lot of time in Figma just like throwing stuff at the canvas, just trying to reason through stuff. And then I'm jumping out really soon after that. But I still need, I don't know, I don't find code an exploratory medium. It's quite like regimented.
Somebody, damn, I can't remember who just told me this, like yesterday, said that Codex is like Candy Crush for boys. And I think there's like something to that, because like you said catnip, and it like instantly reminded me of that. And it's like, it is super intoxicating to just like sit there, and it's like, I put in a prompt, I got an output, and like the button is there, and it like it does an animation. It's like, great, it's so good. But like, that's why I actually think, I know you were kind of teasing yourself about spending time in Figma, but like, you're actually spending time thinking about the problem, looking at different solutions, maybe like stepping back, looking at the canvas and being like, what should we actually do here? Whereas it's very easy to get tripped up in the loop of, I put in a prompt, I got an output, look, task is done, on to the next thing. Which is like, I do that all the time. Like it's super, super easy, because it's like, it's so fun. I've never been able to move this fast. But then maybe a day goes by and I'm like, what the hell did I do?
At 2 a.m. in the night.
Oh my God.
But I think just to sort of level set this a bit, I still think that if you're a beginner in the field, you should absolutely spend time building like, shit ton of things. I had a different word in my mind, but like, you should like really build a lot.
Shit is the one you went for.
But like really just like absolutely go crazy and like build as much things as you can, and build a body of experience around what would lead to what experiences matter, and what is worth pursuing, what is not worth pursuing. I think for like people who've spent a lot of time in the industry, we can all sometimes be quite jaded. We're just like, oh my God, there's like 3 PRs and like I must look at this. But it's like if you're someone who's just starting out, just like really just go let the tokens rip, find free tokens. Like people are giving you away, giving it away, right? And just like build as many things as you can, and like just really like try and understand what does it mean to build a good product. What does it mean for like what is a good interaction? Try and ship things, and that's the only way in this age. And I think continue to you would be able to sort of get an edge over others. Yeah.
Okay, so I think before we head over to like Q&A, I have a question I'd like all of you to answer. That's a bit like, it's a bit of a thinker. But if you could go back 12 months, right, and tell yourself 12 months ago a little bit about what the world's going to look like now, what would you try and communicate to a younger version of yourself? Maybe to give yourself an advantage, or to like calm your anxiety. I don't know. Anything that's stood out to you that you wish you knew 12 months ago?
I think the first thing that comes to my mind is to be ambitious. Just like really don't let your ideas bring you down. I think a year ago, we were probably at 5.2, 5.1, and like, you would put in a prompt and you would get an output, but it was really like it was like a game of like, it was a coin toss whether or not it would be useful, right? And I think if at that point someone told me that, you just like be ambitious, try and build whatever you can, bootstrap it in whichever way you can, and then eventually things and models will continue to become better, and they will continue to become better at a pace that you would probably not have imagined, that all your tech debt would just cease to exist at some point, right? Or you would have a different problem. You know.
It doesn't exist if you don't know it's there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just ignore it. And, and I think that would be the one thing which I would probably like tell myself, and like just like be like super fucking ambitious. I said it. Sorry. Yeah.
It's a good answer.
I would tell myself to spend a lot less time on Twitter because
Saw you tweeting earlier, so yeah.
I know that's why this is top of mind. I find that the FOMO in the AI industry is really challenging to deal with. I find it challenging personally because a certain level of just like imposter syndrome of everybody else knows what they're doing. Everyone else is raising $1 billion. I don't know what the hell's going on. But I think more specifically in with my role at Notion, it's very easy to get distracted by like the new hot thing, either a product launch or a model capability or a new model or something. Oh, Jesus, the Grokbot thing the other day. It threw us into a tailspin. We're like, wait, should this be all of our agents? Like this, there's so many good ideas in here. And like that over the course of a year is like so distracting from what are the actual core user customer business problems that we're like trying to solve here. Now it's like I don't want to put my head in the sand and like ignore that stuff because there's tons of really cool, interesting ideas. We got to be ambitious. We got to experiment with things. But it can also fuel this fear of, oh, what we did is wrong, delete it, pivot to this other new idea. And then you end up just like aimlessly zigzagging and not actually making any forward progress.
Yeah, mine is sort of in a similar direction. It's sort of like I thought about it. It's like nobody knows shit at the moment. Is like really what it comes down to. Because like I see all these hot takes on Twitter. Tomorrow this happens. Next week that. That's gonna be the product of the year. And then like a few weeks go by, and nobody talks about it anymore. And then you're like, huh, yeah. And so like I think you see maybe like a few things that happen throughout the year, but you don't see all the other things that happened that went nowhere. And I think it's just like, it's a bit freeing when you just assume nobody else knows that much more than you are because everybody tries to figure it out. Like, yes, maybe in a model lab, you have like a few more freaks that run tokens all day long, but everybody has also sort of the same access. Like you have like maybe new model, but yeah, that's not necessary to do something great. So I think like just assume you're not stupid and bet on yourself and just try out stuff because it is like what you said, like when you're on Twitter, I feel like almost, everybody knows what's going on. But I think in reality, it isn't really that. So yeah, I would leave it with that. What would you say? Now I'll throw you under the bus.
I guess I would reiterate something to myself that I sort of try to remember all the time, which is keep your identity small. I think that's always been like a good tactic, which is like don't put labels on yourself. It's been very useful for me in the past year. Like it's always been hard to pin down exactly what I do. And in the past, that's like held me back because I don't really fit into any category. But I think now everyone is sort of feeling like that. And I think it's good to shed labels. I think it's like they restrict you from doing stuff you might not otherwise think you can do. And yeah, I think it's scary. Like it's very, like it attacks your like sense of self. Everything that's happened over the last 12 months attacks your like sense of who you are. But it's on the flip side, it's there's never been a more exciting time to be someone with a computer and a couple $100. That's an important caveat. You need that. But yeah, there's never been a better time to be someone who's curious and someone who just wants to build stuff. So just focus on that.
Nice. So we're gonna open up for questions. I'm looking around and try to find her. So when you have a question, just raise your hand and Stephanie tries to find you. We're trying to get through as many as possible.
Fellow Stephanie here, product designer. Wow. Okay, all good. So you all mentioned, which I thought was super interesting, kind of the idea of like AI and prototyping really freeing up space to think more about user problems and kind of what you're actually solving for. But what I find super interesting is looking at more design mature companies like Notion, for instance, versus a small startup. Like, do you see, at least in the community, this actually happening? Like, I'm a bit cynical and kind of old school in some ways as a designer. I like to bounce in and out of Figma and use different AI tools, but I'm not like solely married to just writing prompts. I find it kind of limiting to my process. So I'm curious, do you guys see like, in the design world, it's sort of classic of like, you don't want to show hi-fi designs too early because then stakeholders become attached and think it has to be this specific way. Like, do you find more of that happening? I guess, yeah, basically, are people just like shipping more crap that just doesn't solve any real problems, or are people actually plotting out more time to think? Because I feel like as a designer, this time to think has just completely collapsed.
Yes. So yeah, there's definitely like a bit of that. I think like it depends. It's usually the answer. But I think in this case, like we see, like actually I have two designers here, and they're like probably the ones that spend the most time in Figma because they do very visual work. Like one is a brand designer, and the other is a design engineer who does website, and a lot of those stuff you're very visual, you want to see. When it comes to product design, in the product, what we see at the moment, at least very often, like if there is already a construct around it, like in designer oftentimes goes and prototypes in the product straight away. What's nice to explore, you can just build a few parallel solutions and see like, okay, which one clicks the most? Because that became very cheap now, right? Like before it would be a very serial process, but now you can, I think we had like recently on a mobile app, to make this precise, we looked at search. Okay, how can we change search? Okay, let's build two things and look at it. And then you see, there are certain things we like about each part, and then you evolve over it. So this one, for example, happened straight away in the product. There was not really Figma involved. But I think it depends. But I'm curious what, Ryan, maybe you see in your space there as well.
Yeah, the designers at Notion, they don't spend a ton of time in Figma. What I see a lot of our designers doing now is so one of my besties at Notion, Brian Lovin, he created what he calls the prototype playground, where he's essentially like taken our design system and put it into this like very slim, minimal playground setup that any designer has their own sort of like namespace and can go in and just like rip. Nobody reviews code; it's in its own repo. But the point of that project was to be able to build like real touchable prototypes and then share them internally. And then that has helped him actually step back, him and all the designers at Notion step back and think about the problem that they're trying to solve and do exactly that, like create 5 variants of a thing and then touch and feel them and then do their own process of elimination. Be like, all right, I like these 3 variants that feel all right. They'll send them over to like the eng team and we're like playing with it. Maybe we send it to some leader and we're like, gathering feedback and what do you think? And that's helped speed up the process. And not to mention, we can take that prototype and literally just send the pull request of this like isolated change to Claude or to Codex or whatever, and then build the thing, but with like the big Notion design system that we have. And that's mostly like a velocity thing. But I will say for sure, we have gone through periods, and I'm sure we will continue to go through them, where we're just like, it's so easy to build something, so we're just going to build every little idea that we have, and we end up just like shipping a bunch of bullshit, and then we're like, whoa, wait a minute, let's delete all of these things. Like these 2 are actually good, but let's delete the rest. And we've had to even have like a bit of a moment where we looked at design and PM, and we're like, engineers have to like review all of this stuff and we don't know what's going on here. And I think that was like a good exercise for us to feel how fast we can move and then quickly realize like, oh yeah, we shouldn't just literally build every idea that we have.
Hi. So I have a question that kind of revolves around, when I build stuff with AI now, I find myself wrestling against docs, plans, ADRs, and all of this extra context, which in the beginning feels very positive, which means that it kind of helps me understand the code better and guide the agent and all that. My question is really on how that scales, and if you think there's a healthy ratio that you should keep between this enormous amount of context that you're keeping co-located with your project and the actual lines of code that hit production and have functionality. And if it ever becomes like a challenge to maintain that extra context, all of the docs and extra documentation that you keep in the project.
I can probably take that from my limited experience so far. So my entire codex setup right now is just 3 threads, which have been running since, I don't know, bunch of months. I don't usually care about spinning up new threads, and in case the thread wants, it can spin up a new thread. What I do care about is what is my original sort of idea that I give to the thread, and just like an ability for the model itself to verify whatever it is that I've asked it to do that. And I think it's like, if you want to sort of like I've come to realize that you can always sort of like one shot like a 80% thing of what you want to build. But truly when you want to build things, you really want to like sort of sit with the idea, like, muddle around a bit, like try different, versions of it, or just like ask it to do certain small changes and so on and so forth. And that is truly only possible if you just have like, a thread wherein you're just like bouncing around ideas, and then eventually you figure out that this is the thing that you want to go with, and you go with it. Lastly, on like all the agents.md skills and so on and so forth, I have like very bare minimum setup. And it's like just like 4 lines in my agents.md with like things which just piss me off, I'm like, don't say like do this and like it is this and not that, for example. And maybe like one skill which is like a babysit PR skill, which would just wait for my CI to be green. But that's pretty much it. I'm like the opposite, wherein I don't want I don't use plan mode, I don't use goal, just put a prompt and just like sit with the prompt for a bit, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Quickly to add to this, just 2 practical things that I see happening at Raycast. Like one, before AI, we had this rule: no comments in the code base. That is not longer the rule; it's rather the opposite. Because if you come around as human or agent, it gives you context, which is nice. And the other one, which we went through recently, we're rewriting our agent harness. And the engineers particularly wrote documentation, how that harness is supposed to work. And that is helpful for, again, an agent to get context, but also we as team members read it to like really make sure that it's like following the right rules. So it's almost a bit meta in that way, which abstracts that. That's like just 2 things that I've seen us day to day using.
We do almost the same thing with our agent harness rewrite. We have markdown files literally in the code checked in, and the markdown files get updated with the code. But what's been great is we have this like skill. I don't remember exactly how it's set up, but it will effectively require anybody working on a coding agent to sorry, not the person, but the agent, to keep the spec in sync with the code. And so effectively, it's like doubled the lines of code with any sort of change that goes on, but it does keep the doc, like, I like air quote documentation, because these docs are like not even for human consumption, but it's like if I've got 20,000 lines of code, but it's summarized. The rules, the invariants, and whatnot are summarized in some short markdown file, and that we have some sort of hook that forces an agent to keep these things in sync. That's been like extremely helpful for us.
Hello, Jamie from Superhands here. Quick fire round. What, inspired by you, Thomas, what is your favorite product of the year and why across the panel? So far, there's a bit of the year left, isn't there?
Mine's easy because we just launched it like 2 days ago.
Are you not allowed to say your own product, actually?
Well, I didn't work on it, so... No, genuinely, Grokbot is like a knowledge work agent thing that lives on your computer, and it's completely changed the way I do it. Everything. It's made me much lazier, which, you know, has its pros and cons, but it's kind of like one of those moments where I was like, oh, this is going to get serious. I think normies are going to start using AI soon.
Are we going one after another? Okay. Of course, but I'm not gonna shill our own product. I would actually like, it's maybe not for this year, but it's like just something that just became very handy. It's in the neighborhood granola. Like it's just like it's this thing that sits in the background at different solutions for it, but it actually enriches my whole agent experience. So it like I feed in those nodes and I just have the context of everything. I don't need to remember. It's like it's a thing that just works. So I enjoy that. So yeah.
I'm gonna sound like such a kiss ass, but I really like the Raycast dictation. It's really, really good. It replaced Whisper for me. I've been using Raycast for like a really long time, and I get a ton of joy by like deleting apps. And so to just like have a thing that I'm already using all the time, do a function that is really important to me, but then very well, and then to like also to just like get the hell out of my way. There's other apps with their pop-ups and alerts and other things. Like it drives me crazy. So it's good.
We take it.
This is so bad because I was going to say Raycast as well. I just fucking love the product, right? But I think if I was to choose one, I don't think I have outside of Raycast. I don't think I have one that I really love. I do. Recently, it's not we who shipped the keyboard, but there was like this like hardware keyboard. It's called like Creator Micro. You can buy it from Worklouder if you want to. I've just like really enjoyed working with it just because it's like a physical manifestation of all the things that like I've been working on and so on. So it's been really nice to have like a physical device which you can like talk to and like have it sort of like do the light bulb thingy, and it's good for my brain to see like different lights and so on. So it's nice. But yeah.
What's yours?
I haven't enjoyed Codex, to be fair, and that's not too suck up to you. No, but I also Whisper. Whisper's crazy, actually. But I'm sick of note-taking stuff right now. Whisper's trying to launch that in my face every day. So yeah, pop-ups everywhere.
Yeah, try Raycast dictation.
We can onboard you.
I'm all in the Raycast dictation. It's like anyway. Guys, Eli here. Question, because this is driving me mad on social media. This kind of like posts that I have 250,000 agents running simultaneously, and everything is like, and I run 2, 3, and anything more, I get cuckoo. Like I don't know what the fuck is going on, and I'm like, I get lost. It's like a me problem, It's like not the agents. Probably the agents can keep running, whatever. As long as you have cash, they will keep running. But I get lost about where am I in? What was I doing here? What was this prompt about? And then I spend more time kind of like trying to go backwards in what this thread was about and this thread was about. So how do you feel about this idea of like it's great to have multiple agents running in parallel and doing all this stuff? It also makes us more productive. But at some point, do you not get lost in what's actually happening in front of you? Do you wait for that prompt to come back with something before you move to something else? Like practically, what are you doing with this parallelism of agents? I don't know how to call it. I hope it makes sense.
Yes. Can I maybe take it first? I know like on Twitter, like the rage is that, oh, token max, token max, token max, whatever. Internally, at least in my team, like we're a huge fan of token minimizing. We want to like reduce the work for ourselves, and it includes like review and so on and so forth. And inherently, one of the sayings that comes to my mind is like, a fool with a tool is still a fool. You know, and it's like when it comes to me, like I don't think I very sparingly use subagents. There are like some specific use cases for subagents wherein it does make sense. Like for example, when I'm pushing some sort of code, like I want like a subagent to continue looking at the CI, and maybe I don't want 5.6 Sol ultra high for like looking at a goddamn CI. I can just do that with like a cheaper model. And in those cases it makes sense, but like usually like as long as, for me personally, as long as I'm just looking at one thread and maybe like two parallelly, that's good enough for me. I think anyone who says otherwise, they probably have bigger brains, and I'm happy for them.
I'm with you. The shit on Twitter of people being like, I got all these agents and all these personas. Here's my PM. Here's my engineering manager, and like all this stuff. And like you are out, like that to me is like AI psychosis. Because it's like the classic like bell curve meme of just like you just prompt and then you do all this crazy shit and then it's like just prompt. Though I will say I do feel the struggle of like multitasking. I'm way more productive than I've ever been in my life right now. But if I were to look back like 2 years ago, the thing I miss the most is being able to like lock in and get into flow state. That is gone. I get like little glimpses of it here and there where I'm like designing some spec and I'm like, oh my God, like me and Fable, we got it. We landed at the thing. But like, that's like 10 minutes. And then I'm back into the prompting mines and where I'm just sending off like a dozen agents to do things. But I think at the end of the day, you said it earlier, like I'm a builder and I like to build stuff and I like to solve problems. And I know that I am doing more at a higher rate and quality than I've ever been able to build before. And that's like extremely motivating to me. So at the end of the day, I'm way more excited about like how much I can actually do. But it's like it's not perfect. It's not zero sum.
So about like, I don't know, 3 months ago, we did this like piece on the Cursor blog about, because we're like model agnostic, we can look at some data that like other people can't. And one of the interesting things that stood out was like the complete asymmetry in like contexts and token consumption. So the top 1% of token consumption is like 75 times greater than the bottom 50. And the top 10% of users is like greater than the rest, right? So it's incredibly asymmetric when you see stuff online. You remember you're seeing like these people in the 1%. But I've been working on like a follow-up piece to this, like digging into like what are those people doing? Where are those tokens going? Because like I'm not doing any of that. So my hunch was always that like they must be able to do like tasks where the agent can self-verify, right? Like the type of work they're doing is just like not the same as mine because I need to like step in and check stuff every now and then because I'm doing front-end stuff. And so I dug into it and I looked at like language distribution, and you can see that the top 1% of users skew heavily towards systems programming, like Rust, C++, like TypeScript is a bit of a hard one to define, but so they definitely skew towards that, and they skew towards just like features that encourage doing stuff in parallel. But I think the important thing is they're able to find ways to step out of actually like doing the work and get the agents to verify and set up these loops and these factories and everything. But that's not every kind of work. Like it's not reasonable to assume at the moment anyways that every kind of work can be done like that.
Might be a silly question, but what does a design engineer actually do?
That's a good question.
It is
What a good question.
it's a great question. Anyone else want to take it? It depends on the company quite a lot. Like every company is completely different. I was a design engineer at my last company too. Previously, I was a product designer. And it changes, like, I don't know, it's at Cursor, it's a bit more like front-end engineering because the designers are probably more what you'd call like a design engineer. They're like shipping code. Whereas, so they push that like complexity onto us design engineers, which is basically like, I don't know. I think the only difference between us and the designers at Cursor is maybe some prior understanding, like some pre-AI understanding of the code. But there's not much like difference in the work we ship, like the PR counts and stuff. We're a weird company, right? Like we have unlimited tokens and we expect everyone to like push PRs. So it's a bit hard to say what a design engineer is at Cursor. But I don't know. My hot take, I think design engineer is like peaking now, and with this like role compression, I think it'd be very unclear what a design engineer is in 12 months. There'll be like very little difference between a designer and a design engineer.
Hi guys, thanks for that. Firstly, Naveen here is a big fan of Raycast. Like he's made the whole startup download Raycast and start using it. So thank you again for building these products. Sweet. So my question is around ownership. I'm Amish, by the way, CTO at Pesto, and my question is around ownership. That with such a fast pace of PRs going out, decisions being made, the ownership is now being shifted to somewhere, to someone. And when you're doing PR reviews, what does that mean? How do you step up or inculcate that ownership skill in the team that you're building together, right? And this ownership also belongs on the other side where you said there are so many things that distract you. How do you take ownership when you're not experimenting with a few things and you're missing the train? So how do you take ownership on things and say, these are the reasons we've done that, while decision making is becoming so quick and it's getting being sent or being dependent on other agents and models?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think for us, not much has changed in this sense. Like we always had people who own features or part of features or infrastructure. So for us, that has been very similar in that regard. So it's definitely from the engineering perspective, but also from a design perspective and other things. I feel like for us, it's still there. Maybe that's something that changes in bigger companies, but for us, that's been, I think, with or without AI, very similar. Maybe the scale of certain ownership has changed because now one person can be responsible for like a bigger project, feature, etc. And then to this like roles, like because every role expands a bit left and right, so to say, you maybe own even more part of the process and being maybe driven more to like also think about some of those things. But for us, it has been, I think, very consistent. I don't see like there was like a step change necessarily. Maybe a boring answer, but yeah.
I think a lot about what ownership even like is. And in the classic sense, when it comes to like a bigger engineering team or a code base, I think ownership comes down to like who's responsible for being on call and responding to an incident and like fixing the bugs, or like a sense of like guardianship, so that other people don't come in and screw up, this beautiful system that you've built. I honestly have always been like pretty put off about like over ownership. I've worked at places where people are very territorial about their work. And so even like before LLMs, I was always kind of like, yeah, we all work at the same company. Like we all kind of like own the whole code base. We should feel a sense of responsibility. But I also don't want to skew too far into like anarchy. I do hope that we see people using like agents and factories to do a bit more of the we talk about like code gardening of just like fixing bugs, and there's like paper cuts and all these sort of things that are going on that traditionally fall to like whatever team owns a system or a feature, that I hope can be like completely automated and that teams can be freed up. But I do still think that you need people that understand how these systems work and can protect it from people or agents that don't actually know the intricate details.
Yeah, I think we probably have like a similar setup as well, in the sense that so there are like two things. One, if you open a PR, you are responsible for that PR, right? You cannot just like open slop PRs and just expect someone like who's the reviewer to just like push changes and then be like, oh my God, like I fixed it for you. And, like, here's like, I'm going to merge it for you. So like, have ownership in like what you're contributing and like understand what you're contributing. And then, there's the second thing, which is like equipping everyone in the team, including like, anyone who's just joined, who doesn't have all the, information about how to take care of these systems with like good run books, which are maintained by agents, or just like essentially equipping them with skills, pun intended, to be able to firefight in a situation wherein they don't know what's happening, but we can like sort of provide them the context to sort of like fix those things. So basically that.
Hello? Does it work? Yeah. What is an uncommon thing that you have in your setup that gave you like a big increase in the quality output of your AI generated code? We all heard of loops, all these things. Like, what is an uncommon thing that is really working for you?
It's not. Well, I think it's uncommon because, I think it's not. It's the anti-pattern. I have like one long chat for each project. I have one that's been running for like 3 months. But I, like Veep was saying earlier, like the uncommon thing is putting like a lot of effort into the prompting, like just being very clear about what you want, like using very precise language that's like of the domain of what you're trying to build, so it's like already in the area. I think unfortunately that is uncommon because there's just a temptation to like grind through stuff. But I will take like 20 minutes to write a prompt, and me in this chat, we go way back.
You have a great relationship with this chat. For me, it's like dictation. I know this is now weird to mention, but like I basically just like provide much more context by talking to it. So I sit there for like 3, 4, 5 minutes and just talk. It's faster, simpler. It's how I sometimes think as well. So yeah, that helps me talking out loud.
The two things that come to mind, I mentioned this like review skill that I have. I absolutely love it. It like breaks changes down. I like delegate to different models to, I have it do 2 passes. It looks for like bugs, which is like kind of obvious. And then the second is like maintainability. I actually think, I can't remember what I called it, but in the doc or in the skill, it's like deslop, which the agents are like really good at like deslopping their own work, which I love. The other one, I'm going to sound like a psychopath, but I actually do all of my coding inside Notion. We have like an internal agent, the one that we are like currently rebuilding, that we give full access to a remote development environment. It's using like our own harness. And like, we use Notion internally for dog fooding, and to be able to cut out another app that machine and like get checkout and all that stuff that I have to like manage. And instead I'm just designing tasks and specs in Notion. And then I open Notion AI and I'm like, build it. And then like 2 hours later, it's like, cool, here's a PR and here's like a client preview link, and I can go click and play with it. It's been awesome.
Yeah, I don't think I have like, so number one would be just voice. Like I yap a lot, when I'm like, I want to build something. I'm just like, bro, this is what I'm thinking. This is how I want it to be. Maybe it should have this. Maybe it should not have this. Like, try this out. Like, what the hell is this? Like, look into this.
Please tell me you say bro.
I do. Like, but it's like, I have this like really, like sort of like, I would just dump all context down. And models now are like good enough to figure out what is important and what is like just this person being loony baloney, right? And I think that's been like super helpful in reducing the number of turns I spend with a model. I still like spend a lot of time looking at what I've built, but that's one. And like second is that I try to have like 0 threads locally, and I just have like a VM. It's like very old school. It's like, there's like a thing which will just like connect to a VM, and we have like remote SSH connection, and I would just like offload tasks to that. It's been super helpful because I can just go from like one thing to the other without having to keep my stupid laptop on and look like a retard everywhere, and it's been super helpful. And sometimes I would just like kickstart a thread from like my phone or whatever. And it's like I've tried to like optimize for reducing the time to a prompt or like time to a thread. It's like as long as there's a thread about it, I would know, right? And that's kind of what I've optimized for.
Hey, I wanted to ask about personalized software. We have some great companies for this question because Glaze is a great product, and even Codex can be personalized. You can just ask Codex to build stuff on Codex. So personalized software, is that the new standard?
Yeah, so I can start. So yeah, we put out this other product called Glaze, which you basically can build your own apps, mainly on the Mac right now. So I think like what's interesting is even with Raycast, we do the same. I feel like if you use apps like they're designed for the masses, and there's always some things that don't fit you perfectly, or maybe even this whole app that you have in your mind don't exist. So I think there is like really like a niche in there to like figure out, like build the app for yourself, and you may be the only audience ever, right? And I think that is like actually really nice because you can make it exactly how you want, right? Like it's this custom-made thing tailored to your needs. And I think like the other thing which then sometimes happen, you maybe have it for yourself, but then it turns out people very close to you, your colleagues or friends, they have probably similar problems, and then it can like spread in this microcosm, right? So I think that that's like something which I think will happen more and more over time. Usually we had the big apps that you always converge to, but I think now because the creation of software is so cheap, you will see way more things, and then also way more things getting adopted. So I think there is like a really appealing angle to that, where basically you can use this personalized software and either build things that were never possible before. Nobody would build them for you. They were too expensive before, and so now you can just do this yourself and get really like this piece of software that you want for yourself.
I mean, we think about this a lot at Notion. This has been the product for, I don't know, 8 years or something, way before LLMs. Like for better or for worse, some people love the customization, some people absolutely hate it. And so I think about this from like an enterprise perspective, and this idea at Notion we talk about malleability a lot, being able to take software and make it malleable and move it around and to like fit whatever your needs are. I think that we've seen a period where big companies can be like, oh, I've got Claude Code. I can like make my own dashboards. I can make my own CRM. Like, cool, no big deal. And then they have to deal with deployments and maintainability and scalability. And like, oops, we didn't like put any security in this thing. And then all of a sudden, people are going to realize, and this is not hypothetical, we have very much seen this. People realize how expensive it is to actually like maintain this software. And it's like, oh shit, maybe just like paying for something like Salesforce is actually worth it because it costs less than whatever 3 full-time engineers' salary. And so I think at like the enterprise level, we're going to see a mix. I also think that there's always going to be a world where these like vertical point solutions are really good. They're really, really good at their like one job. And so but I'm like, I mean, on the personal level, like I've got like a dozen little like toy apps, and I think that is like so amazing.
Yeah, I think similar. I would mostly focus this on like personal side of things. Like I've built so much like single-use software, which just does like one thing. For example, I have this one sort of chime app, which would, whenever I have a meeting, would just like literally take over my screen and just be like, go to this room, like you need to go there. And like one which like would just like let me know that these are the things I haven't responded to, and so on and so forth. And I feel like as models start to get better and as like apps start to get better, we'll get to this phase wherein everyone can make this even more easier. And like they would maybe they're like sort of evolutionary in the nature, as in like as your patterns change, you know, the app changes and so on and so forth as well. So yeah, very bullish on that, and I hope this trend continues. Yeah.
Hi. Does it work? So I try to keep short. So the core question on Gen AI is, how do I make a probabilistic system deterministic enough to integrate it in a deterministic enterprise architecture? Okay. So it's a probabilistic system, a black box. So when today we were speaking of spec-driven development, okay? But there's another domain, which is automated reasoning, right? Where we have our chatbots, where we have our agentic loops and such. Why I'm mentioning this is following. We have a lot of mature tools already on the reasoning system on how to make it deterministic enough so we can harness its power, right? For example, one guardrail could be that it makes the AI produce confidence values I decline on, right? In an agentic loop, maybe I reason enough until I reach a certain confidence value. When I reach it, I give the answer to the user. This confidence value I anchor on data governance, meaning my data is telling the AI already a certain quality and says what is the authority of truth and such, right? I have tools like online evaluation, offline evaluation. And offline evaluation, I have golden answers, golden questions, right? And I can get metrics, right? A recall from the knowledge artifacts you should have gotten. When I ask you this question, how many did you get back and such? So I have a lot of guardrailing. But when we come back to spec-driven development, what are our guardrails, right? So we look at Martin Fowler, right? Martin Fowler is an architect. Is also an American. He's quite renowned. You know what he says? He agrees with you. The human in the loop is a problem when we spec-driven develop. Why? Because we are too slow. So the human must go away. So we don't block the AA. Problem is, what is my guardrail that what it is produced is good enough? So let's think together, right? We are all engineers. We could say, my guardrail is I go API first. What does API first mean? It means I define all my contracts on my system boundaries, right? I write test-driven development. I write tests onto it. And then they say, hey, AI, go and develop. But make sure that all these tests pass. But what did I achieve? I achieved maybe I have feature completeness, right? But when we look at software quality values of ISO 25010, right? There's also feature appropriateness, right? How I achieved it? It's like I can grab my ear like this, but I can grab my ear also like this. So what is my guardrail to hinder the AI to do this? You see what I mean? So I have only so little to do. So when we say things like, if I don't do code reviews, right? This might work for little startups. It will not work for a bank where a change in domain will affect 50 software down the road. So my question to you is, because you're all experienced engineers, it's not about exposing or something like that, because as you said, we all don't know. We all research, right? But in your experience on spec-driven development, especially when you say, I do not review, how do you ensure the quality, especially on the wider architecture?
Damn.
First of all, I thought you were going to keep it short. I mean, honestly, I'm probably not the best person to answer this. I like to keep things as simple as possible. So mostly I'm just like, I'm going to prompt this thing. I'm going to see this thing, and I'm going to see whether it, sort of like passes the test, passes my vibe check. And then, this is a very crude version of what I would do, right? And like, if it works, it's great. And if it's, if there are some issues, we iterate. So I don't do like a lot of, you mentioned a lot of words, but like, I don't do a lot of those, but it's mostly just like, just talk to the thing, make it work, and then ship it, and then we see.
I don't know. I think the humans, at least at this point in time, I think the humans always got to be in the loop. I mean, as soon as you did this little guy, I'm immediately thinking about all these LLMs that are like busting out of their sandboxes. I just think that we're in a state still where they're unpredictable. As many guardrails as we want to have in place. But I guess I don't get too worried about it. I'm still in the loop. I still want to see the output. I still want to understand what it's doing. And things are constantly evolving and changing. And so whatever technique, like you mentioned evals, I have like a love-hate relationship with evals because like whatever technique we land on today that we think is like bulletproof, in 3 months is like worthless and everything changes again. So I think it's a constant game of catch up.
Yeah, I think quickly to add to this, I keep it short. I think it depends, right? As a startup, or generally, when there is a button not really aligned, who cares? If you think about self-driving cars, right? Like we've been having self-driving cars like a decade, right? But they didn't work a decade ago. And then there's this enormous hill climbing that takes a long time to really define all those edge cases and get to like an acceptance criteria that we want to have, right? And I think that's like depends really on the use case. Like some have a way higher acceptance criteria and you kind of need to get there somehow. And some others are like, you can YOLO it a bit and it doesn't really matter too much.
Steph, can I ask a question?
Yeah, you can ask a question.
Do you guys say please when you prompt?
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
I don't think so.
You know they're listening.
I'm incredibly polite to my agents. I thank them every time they do a good job.
Oh,
Like
so you
after-
say thank you.
I say, great job, good work. Or like, I
With no
recycle.
follow-up? Just literally, great job?
Usually like, okay, now we're going to do this. It's kind of like, like I got to keep them happy. I don't know. I've always had this opinion that you sort of just talk to them like they're colleagues and you'll get the best results out of them. I remember talking to a designer friend. He was like, like I just can never get Claude to do what I want. And then I looked at his prompts and it's like, fix this, And if you wouldn't send that to a colleague, so I just talk to it like it's a person.
I know, I say please too. I read something that was like the act of saying please to a model, maybe it's like completely pointless, but it's a good practice to be in for when we actually talk to another human being again.
But I mean, we went from the time wherein there were prompts which would be like, if you don't solve this, I would kill your grandma, or you are like, you need to solve
my family's life depends on you getting this right.
Exactly. To, like saying please and thank you. So I like this one a lot more.
Okay, so we're doing one last question. Are we like melting up there? Give me a status check. We're good? Okay.
Dying. Yeah, it's hot as hell.
Melting.
Yeah, I have a last question about AGI safety. It's like we all get very nervous about post AGI apocalypse, and it's like I don't know how many people watch Odyssey, like Doomsday Machine, and all of that. How do we? I know, like, how do we from infra level, from like harness level? I feel like everything is too late when we are working on safety on this level. How do we, like, from a product company that's consume models, how do we prevent that better?
Tough last one. So you mentioned AGI, right? Like I think a couple of years ago, if you would show anybody what you have right now, you would probably think that is already AGI because it's like crazy what you can do with it, right? So I think it's this really weirdly not fully defined thing. So I think there's like this moving target, which you never really know when you have it. And when you have it, it's sort of, you already had it for like a long time. But I think like it's like how to like make this sort of secure and everything. I think it's like what the model labs try to do from a model standpoint, right? Because if the model is out, that's most of the things that controls, that's the intelligence. So I think there's a lot there, but it's very clear like it progresses every few months and gets smarter and smarter. And I think then society maybe needs to catch up here and there a bit with some of those things. But I'm definitely not knowledgeable enough to answer how to like build a harness properly around that.
I mean, we've been dealing with it at Notion, not necessarily like the AGI guardrails, but the human guardrails. Like for instance, we take like prompt injection and like data exfil like pretty seriously. And they're like, it's like every single day I look at my colleagues and be like, if we weren't just like shitty to each other, we wouldn't have to do this. But I think that like the practice of guarding against like bad actors, bad human actors, is helping us build the skills to not necessarily fight bad AGI, but at least have like the guardrails in place. But on like a more human species level, I'm generally like an optimist, and I think that if we study history, that we have gone through periods of industrial revolution and we have gone through periods of dark times, but we have always like netted positive and we've always netted forward. And so I think there will probably be trial and error, but I'm generally thinking that this is a great advancement for humanity and it will move us forward.
Yeah, I think super short. I do think that, like as models start to become significantly sort of like powerful and high agency, you want to put in like good guardrails. And like one of the sort of like examples that I give to people a lot of the times is that many of you over here would run their coding agents in full access mode, right? Which I'm like, please don't do that. Like good friends don't let other friends like sort of like run their agents in full access. You're literally giving like full control to whatever it is that you have, right? So I feel like there is like the model side of things to sort of solve for. There is like harness side of things to solve for. Then there's like people side of things to solve for, right? So like practically what I would say is that if anyone is worried right now about what models are sort of capable of right now, like use like a Guardian type model, which, reviews your tool calls and so on and so forth. All of the coding agents right now support it. So please use it. And just always sort of like think about whenever you're shipping something sort of like from like a customer facing point of view, just like think about it from a position of mistrust, right? Like just try to think about like the worst case possible and try and solve for it. And I have like quite a lot of trust in sort of like model labs as well as like sort of safety teams there and like the rest of the, as sort of like agents harness and so on and so forth develop further, that they're just going to become better and safer and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Awesome. With that, we're going to wrap it up. 3 things from me. So one, there is, I think, hopefully some swag still left there.
We are out. Sorry. Désolé.
So I only have 2 things left then. So first of all, thanks for coming in this heat. I know it's very hot and everybody probably want to have a cool drink. So we have that over there. The other thing, I think most of the time, the most interesting stuff happens afterwards when you mingle with other people. Just be curious. I think London has a lot to give here. So talk to others, figure out what they bring to you and like make some friends. You will never know in 10 years, maybe you see somebody on a stage. It's fun. And then the third one, to really leave on a high note, this space is actually for artists. And so what I happen to know when I came in here, that basically all this event, all the profits and everything goes to the artists. So there are 10 artists here and they basically getting funded by this, which I think is really nice, giving something back to the community as well. With that being said, enjoy the evening and then see you around.